Hello. Today we will solve a question from the TOEFL reading section, focusing on the read an academic passage question type. We will practice identifying the main idea, tracking key details, understanding cause-effect relationships, and noticing repeated concepts so we can choose the most accurate answer based strictly on the passage. Welcome back to another high-energy TOEFL reading session. In this video, we are going to master the read an academic passage task by breaking down a text about history and agriculture. I will guide you through every sentence to show you exactly how to spot the right answers and avoid common traps. Let's make this reading practice count. If you want to boost your score, make sure to subscribe to My TOEFL and hit the notification bell. Join our community today to keep your preparation on track. Ancient irrigation systems. The title, Ancient Irrigation Systems, tells us exactly what this passage is about. The word ancient indicates that the text focuses on history from a very long time ago, such as early civilizations. The phrase irrigation systems refers to the man-made structures and methods used to bring water to land for farming. Together, these key words prepare us to read about how early societies engineered water control to survive and grow. Early agricultural societies depended on reliable water sources to cultivate crops and sustain growing populations. This first sentence sets the stage for the entire passage. I want you to focus on the phrase, reliable water sources. This tells us that having water available consistently was essential. The sentence explains that this water was needed to cultivate crops, which means to grow food. This relationship between water and food production is the foundation for the rest of the text. In regions such as Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt, farmers constructed canals and reservoirs to control seasonal floods and store water for dry periods. Here, the author gives us specific examples and reasons. Notice the phrase, constructed canals and reservoirs. These are the specific structures the farmers built. Why did they build them? The text explicitly says they wanted to control seasonal floods and store water. This cause and effect detail is very likely to appear in a question, so keep it in mind. Archaeological findings show that organized irrigation increased crop yields and allowed settlements to expand into previously uninhabitable areas. This sentence describes the positive results of the irrigation systems. The phrase, increased crop yields, means they produced more food. Because of this success, settlements were able to expand into new places. This explains how irrigation helped societies grow larger and occupy more land. Engineers designed complex channel systems that distributed water across large fields with remarkable precision. Now we move to the technical aspect. The text mentions complex channel systems, which highlights the difficulty and skill involved. It notes that these systems distributed water with remarkable precision. This emphasizes that the ancient engineers were very skilled and exact in their work. Clay tablets and historical records indicate that communities developed rules to allocate water fairly and prevent conflict among farmers. This sentence shifts from engineering to social organization. It is important to note that communities created rules. The purpose of these rules was to allocate water fairly and to prevent conflict. This shows that managing water required law and order, not just physical canals. Researchers describe irrigation management as a collective effort because success depended on cooperation, maintenance, and shared labor among villagers. This is a key sentence for understanding the social nature of irrigation. The text calls it a collective effort. To understand what this word means, look at the context clues, cooperation and shared labor. These words tell us that everyone worked together as a group. However, irrigation also created environmental challenges when poor planning caused soil salinization and reduced agricultural productivity. The word, however, signals a shift to a negative aspect. We learn that poor planning led to environmental challenges. Specifically, it caused soil salinization, which damages the land. This sentence introduces the consequences of not managing the systems well. Comparative studies between ancient and modern irrigation practices reveal that sustainable techniques include crop rotation and careful water monitoring. Here, the passage connects the past to the present. It mentions sustainable techniques like crop rotation and careful water monitoring. This implies that we have learned which methods work best to avoid the problems mentioned in the previous sentence. Today, historians and environmental scientists analyze early systems to understand how technological innovation and social organization shaped agricultural development. The final sentence summarizes the current relevance of this topic. Experts study these early systems to understand the bigger picture of technological innovation and social organization. It ties the engineering and social aspects together as key factors in development. Now that we have analyzed the passage, let's look at the first question. What is the main idea of the passage? This question asks for the main idea, which means we need to find the answer that summarizes the most important points of the entire text, not just one small detail. The passage discusses how ancient societies built systems to manage water, the social rules they created, and the challenges they faced. We are looking for an option that combines the concepts of irrigation, agriculture, and the management or organization required. Let's take a closer look at option A. Ancient irrigation systems were simple tools used only in desert regions. This option claims the systems were simple tools and used only in desert regions. However, paragraph 2 mentions complex channel systems, which contradicts the idea that they were simple. Also, while Egypt is mentioned, the text says they allowed expansion into previously uninhabitable areas, not just deserts. This option is too narrow and incorrect. Now, let's take a closer look at option B. Irrigation systems supported agricultural growth, but required cooperation and careful management. This option captures the core message. It mentions that irrigation increased crop yields, agricultural growth, and paragraph 2 states that success depended on cooperation and rules. Paragraph 3 also discusses the need for careful water monitoring to avoid problems. This summary covers the benefits, the requirements, and the management aspects found in all paragraphs. Correct. Now, let's take a closer look at option C. Modern farming methods completely replaced historical irrigation techniques. The text states that researchers compare ancient and modern practices, and that we analyze early systems to understand development. It never says modern methods completely replace the historical ones. In fact, it suggests we learn from them. This is an exaggeration. Incorrect. Now, let's take a closer look at option D. Water distribution was primarily controlled by military authorities. This option introduces military authorities. If you scan the text, you will see no mention of the military, soldiers, or armies. The text mentions farmers and communities, but not the military. This information is not in the passage. Incorrect. The correct answer is B because the key expressions in the text directly match this option, while the other choices either provide incomplete information or clearly contradict the passage. Moving on to the second question. The word in paragraph 2 is closest in meaning to. This is a vocabulary question. We need to find the synonym for the word collective, as it is used in paragraph 2. Context clues are essential here. The sentence says, success depended on cooperation, maintenance, and shared labor among villagers. These clues suggest working together as a team. Let's take a closer look at option A, individual and private. The words individual and private mean done by one person alone. This is the opposite of cooperation and shared labor. Incorrect. Now, let's take a closer look at option B, shared by a group. This option, shared by a group, aligns perfectly with the context clues, cooperation, and shared labor among villagers. A collective effort is one that involves everyone in the group. Correct. Now, let's take a closer look at option C, temporary and unstable. The word temporary means lasting for a short time. There is no indication in the sentence that the effort was short-term or unstable. The focus is on the people involved, not the duration. Incorrect. Now, let's take a closer look at option D, difficult to organize. While the text implies that the systems were complex, the word Collective specifically defines the type of effort, shared, not the difficulty of it. Difficult does not mean the same thing as collective. Incorrect. The correct answer is B, because the key expressions in the text directly match this option, while the other choices either provide incomplete information or clearly contradict the passage. Let's continue to the third question. According to paragraph 1, why did early societies build canals and reservoirs? This is a detail question. It asks for the specific reason why canals and reservoirs were built, based on paragraph 1. We need to look for the sentence in the first paragraph that mentions canals and reservoirs, and see what purpose follows. Let's take a closer look at option A, to increase rainfall in agricultural areas. The text talks about controlling floods and storing water, but it never mentions that building these structures could increase rainfall. Humans built them to manage existing water, not to change the weather. Incorrect. Now, let's take a closer look at option B, to control floods and provide water during dry seasons. Let's look at the text. Farmers constructed canals and reservoirs to control seasonal floods and store water for dry periods. This option matches the text word for word. It accurately reflects both purposes mentioned. Correct. Now, let's take a closer look at option C, to create transportation routes for trade ships. While canals can be used for transport, the passage does not mention trade ships or transportation as a reason for building them in this specific context. The focus is entirely on agriculture and water storage. Incorrect. Now, let's take a closer look at option D, to mark political boundaries between regions. There is no mention of political boundaries in the first paragraph. The canals were for farming, not for drawing lines on a map. Incorrect. The correct answer is B, because the key expressions in the text directly match this option, while the other choices either provide incomplete information or clearly contradict the passage. Next, we have the fourth question. All of the following are mentioned about irrigation systems, except. This is a negative factual information question, indicated by the word except. This means 3 of the options are true according to the passage, and 1 is false. We need to find the one that is not mentioned, or is contradicted by the text. Let's take a closer look at option A. They improved crop production. Paragraph 1 states that organized irrigation increased crop yields. Increased crop yields means the same as improved crop production. Since this is mentioned, it is not the answer. Incorrect. Now, let's take a closer look at option B. They required cooperation among farmers. Paragraph 2 clearly says that success depended on cooperation. This is explicitly mentioned in the text. Incorrect. Now, let's take a closer look at option C. They sometimes caused soil problems. Paragraph 3 mentions that poor planning caused soil salinization, which is a type of soil problem. This is also mentioned in the text. Incorrect. Now, let's take a closer look at option D. They eliminated the need for agricultural planning. The text states that poor planning caused soil salinization and mentions careful water monitoring and rules. This implies that planning was very important, not that the need for it was eliminated. In fact, the problems arose when planning was poor. This statement contradicts the passage. Therefore, it is the correct answer for the except question. Correct. The correct answer is D, because the key expressions in the text directly match this option, while the other choices either provide incomplete information or clearly contradict the passage. Finally, let's look at the fifth question. What is the relationship between paragraphs 2 and 3? This question asks about the relationship between 2 specific paragraphs. Paragraph 2 discusses the engineering success, rules, and cooperation, the positive management. Paragraph 3 starts with however, and discusses environmental challenges like soil salinization, consequences, and how we compare them to modern sustainable techniques, lessons. We need an option that reflects this shift from management to consequences and lessons. Let's take a closer look at option A. Paragraph 3 presents consequences and modern lessons following the management practices discussed in paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 details the management practices, rules, cooperation. Paragraph 3 then presents consequences, soil salinization, and modern lessons. Sustainable techniques include crop rotation. This perfectly describes the flow and connection between the two paragraphs. Correct. Now, let's take a closer look at option B. Paragraph 3 repeats only the engineering details explained in paragraph 2. Paragraph 3 does not repeat engineering details. Instead, it introduces new topics like soil salinization and crop rotation. It moves the discussion forward rather than repeating it. Incorrect. Now, let's take a closer look at option C. Paragraph 3 focuses exclusively on military uses of irrigation systems. As we noted in the first question, there is no mention of military uses in the text, and definitely not in paragraph 3. This is irrelevant. Incorrect. Now let's take a closer look at option D. Paragraph 3 contradicts the historical evidence introduced in paragraph 2. Paragraph 3 uses the word however to introduce challenges, but it does not claim the evidence in paragraph 2 is false. It simply adds that there were negative side effects alongside the success. It complements the history with a warning rather than contradicting the facts. Incorrect. The correct answer is A, because the key expressions in the text directly match this option, while the other choices either provide incomplete information or clearly contradict the passage.